The school intercom crackled to life, the grainy voice of Principal Warren breaking through the low hum of idle classroom chatter. Attention students and staff. This is a lockdown drill. Please follow protocol and remain in your classrooms until further notice. At first, no one thought much of it. Lockdown drills had become a routine part of school life. Teachers locked doors, covered windows, and instructed students to stay quiet. But something about the tone in the principal's voice felt off. It was tight, hurried, almost as if he had been forced to say those words. The lights flickered, casting eerie shadows across the tiled floors. Seated near the back of room 306, Emily Martin clutched her phone tightly, her pulse quickening. She had always hated these drills. Something about being trapped in a silent classroom made her skin crawl. But as she glanced at Mr. Dawson, their English teacher, she saw it. The unmistakable look of fear in his eyes. This wasn't a drill. The silence that grew louder. Minutes passed, then an hour. No follow-up announcement came. The school remained eerily silent, except for the occasional muffled creak of the old building settling. Students exchanged nervous glances, whispering among themselves. Then came the sound. A single, deliberate knock on the door. The class froze. Mr. Dawson's face went pale as he held a finger to his lips. The knock came again, more forceful this time. 3 slow, deliberate raps. Everyone held their breath. Then, the doorknob turned. Mr. Dawson reacted instantly, placing his full weight against the door. A sickening jolt shook the frame as something, or someone, pushed from the other side. "Who is it?" someone whispered. The response came not in words, but in sound, a low, guttural exhale, followed by the unmistakable scrape of fingernails against the wood. Emily's blood ran cold. Whatever was outside wasn't human. A message in blood. The pressure against the door ceased as suddenly as it had begun. Mr. Dawson stood frozen, his breath shallow. A few brave students crept toward the window, peering out into the dimly lit hallway. A shadow lingered just beyond their view. Then, slowly, something long and skeletal slid across the glass. A hand, no, a claw, dragging itself along the window pane, leaving behind a trail of something dark. Blood. Then came the whispering. It slithered through the cracks in the door, a voice fragmented and broken, like a corrupted audio recording. "Help me! Open the door, please!" It sounded almost human. Almost. Emily felt her stomach lurch. She gripped her desk, her nails digging into the wood. Whoever, or whatever, was outside was playing with them. A sudden sharp bang against the window made the entire class jump. The clawed hand was gone, but in its place, a message had been smeared onto the glass. "Let me in." The others. The minutes crawled by. No one dared to speak. Then, from somewhere deep within the school, the first scream rang out. It was distant, muffled by walls and doors, but there was no mistaking the sheer terror in it. A girl's voice, then another, and another. Something was happening outside their classroom. Emily turned to look at Mr. Dawson, who was gripping his phone with white-knuckled fingers. He had been trying to text someone, anyone, but no messages were sending. The signal was gone. Then, from beneath the door, a pool of crimson began to seep into the room. Blood. It spread slowly, thick and glistening under the flickering fluorescent light. And then they heard it. Footsteps. Not just one pair, but several. Some fast, some dragging, moving through the hallways. And then, from just outside their door, a voice spoke. A voice they all recognized. "Mr. Dawson, it's Principal Warren. Open the door." But Emily knew. They all knew. Principal Warren was dead. They had just heard him scream. The room felt suffocating, thick with the weight of fear. Outside the locked door, Principal Warren's voice echoed in the hallway. "Mr. Dawson, open the door." But something was wrong. His tone was too flat, too calm, as if he wasn't standing in the middle of a nightmare, as if they hadn't just heard him scream in agony moments ago. Mr. Dawson swallowed hard, backing away from the door. The students sat frozen in place, their eyes locked on the shifting shadows beneath the threshold. Then came a knock. 3 slow, deliberate taps, just like before. Emily's breath hitched. The blood seeping under the door had stopped, but the air smelled metallic, thick and wrong. She could hear someone breathing on the other side. Shallow, unnatural. Then came another sound. Scraping. Fingernails, or something far worse, dragging along the wooden surface. "I know you're in there." It still sounded like Principal Warren. But the way his voice dragged, the way it overlapped, like 2 voices speaking at once, one high, one impossibly low, made Emily's stomach twist into knots. She wanted to scream, to run, but there was nowhere to go. Then the doorknob twisted violently. A break in the silence. Mr. Dawson bolted forward, throwing his entire weight against the door. "Back away!" he hissed at the students, his voice barely above a whisper. The door shuddered as something pounded against it, louder, harder. "Mr. Dawson," the voice crooned, "you need to let me in. It's not safe out here." No one moved. Then, slowly, the knocking stopped, the breathing faded, and the hallway went deathly silent. For a moment, all they could hear was the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. And then, boom, boom, boom. Every single door in the hallway slammed open at once. The sound was deafening, a sickening cacophony of metal and wood. Students gasped. A girl near the window let out a strangled sob. Emily felt the hairs on her arms rise. Because the classroom door was still locked, whatever was out there hadn't touched it. It had only opened the others. And then, from somewhere down the corridor, footsteps. Slow, shambling, not just one pair, many. Emily's chest tightened as a new sound joined the footsteps. Whispers, dozens of them overlapping, growing louder. "Join us. We see you. Let us in." Something was coming. The thing in the hallway. Emily couldn't take it anymore. She scrambled to the window, pressing her face to the glass, desperate to see what was happening. At first, all she saw was the dimly lit hallway, the rows of lockers, the eerie flicker of a dying fluorescent light. Then, something moved. A figure, tall, unnaturally thin, its arms hanging limply by its sides. Its head twitched in quick, jerky motions like a broken marionette. Its face wasn't right. It looked like Principal Warren, but the skin was too smooth, as if it had been stretched over something else. His eyes were empty black pits. His mouth hung open, unnaturally wide, as if unhinged. And then, just behind him, more figures emerged from the shadows. Some wore student uniforms. Some had teachers' badges still pinned to their shirts. But their movements were all wrong, their heads lolling, their limbs twitching at impossible angles. And they were all staring at room 306, at them. Then, in unison, their heads snapped sideways, cracking loudly as their necks twisted unnaturally. Emily stumbled backward, barely holding back a scream. The whispering grew louder. "Join us! Open the door!" The things in the hallway took a step forward. "Nowhere to run. Cover the windows!" Mr. Dawson hissed. A few students bolted to the blinds, yanking them down, but Emily could still hear the things outside. Their voices were clearer now, slipping under the door into their ears. "So hungry. Let us in. We remember you, Emily." Her stomach dropped. Her name. The thing outside had said her name. Emily's hands trembled. She looked around, desperate for something, anything that made sense. And then she saw it. Her phone, still in her lap, still recording. Her heart pounded as she pressed play, her fingers shaking. A distorted voice crackled through the speaker. It was the intercom announcement from earlier. "Attention students and staff, this is a lockdown drill. Please follow protocol and remain in your classrooms until further notice. But beneath it, barely audible, was something else. A whisper, faint, hidden, but there. You shouldn't be here. Get out. Emily's breath hitched. Someone, or something, had tried to warn them, but it was too late. Because outside their door, the lights in the hallway flickered out completely, and the whispering turned to screaming. The classroom was drowning in silence, the kind that felt alive. Outside the locked door, the hallway had gone completely dark. The flickering lights had died, leaving only the red glow of the emergency exit signs. But even in the absence of sight, they could hear them. The whispers were gone. Now, all that remained was the sound of breathing, slow, labored. Right outside their door, Emily clenched her fists, fighting the trembling in her limbs. Mr. Dawson stood rigid, his back pressed against the door. No one dared to move. Then, a single wet footstep, then another. Something was in the classroom. It got in. Panic swelled in Emily's chest. She tried to steady her breath, but it felt like the air in the room had thinned. Then, a desk creaked. A slow, dragging sound slithered through the room. It was inside with them. Someone gasped, and Emily turned just in time to see Lily, the girl sitting in the far left corner, clasp a hand over her mouth, eyes wide with terror. And that's when Emily saw it. A shape, low to the ground, crawling between the rows of desks. It was moving wrong, its limbs jutting out at broken angles, shifting in unnatural, jerky motions. Emily's heart slammed against her ribs as the thing stopped, right next to Lily's desk. It knew she was there. Lily's shoulders shook,